Closed versus open is just referring to two broad categories of questions within logical reasoning, right? So you can take all the question types out there that you're familiar with, and you can group them into either closed or open. I think the best example of this is a must-be-true question. I'm assuming everyone here is somewhat familiar with a must-be-true question. That's saying if the statements in the passage are true, which one of the following answer choices must be true on the basis of them, right? So in that case, what you're doing is you're looking for an answer that's proven by the passage. And what you don't want to do is look to information outside of the passage, right? So in that sense, a must be true question is a closed question or a closed record question. You could think about it that way, right? You're limited to the record that they're giving you in the passage, and based on that record, you have to figure out the answer that is proven by that. And often the wrong answers, what do? They go outside the record, right? Either they bring in a new topic, or they go beyond the strength of the passage. The passage may have proven that most people like ice cream, but some answer says that everyone likes ice cream. You're like, well, that's going beyond the record, right? So in a must-be-true question, which is a closed question or a closed record question, you have to stick to the information in the passage. On the flip side of that, a strengthened question says something like, which one of the following, if true, most strengthens the argument above, right? The question itself is inviting you to consider 5 new pieces of information. So the record's not closed. In that sense, the record is open. It's like, hey, here's 5 new pieces of information. Which one of them, if it were accepted as true, would do the most to help the argument above or weaken or whatever? But if we just stick with strengthened question, the point is that's an open question. So on the one hand, you have a must be true question that's closed, and on the other hand, you have a strengthened question, which is open. Okay, now you can just go further with this concept and look at other question types. Supported questions are asking you which one of the following answers is most supported by the information in the passage. That's closed, right? Weaken is the exact same thing as strengthen. It's just a different variant of it. Which one of the following, if true, would do the most to weaken the argument? That's an open question, right? Flaw questions, some of these are less obvious, but they become more obvious once you understand what's fundamentally going on with the question. Flaw questions are closed because what a flaw question is doing is it's giving you an argument. There's a flaw in that argument, and then you're required to describe or choose the answer that accurately describes that flaw. In other words, you can't deviate from the record. You can't make up a flaw that didn't happen. The correct answer can't describe something that didn't happen. There's one example on an older test where I think the wrong answer is wrong for one word. There was one example in the record, and the wrong answer that a lot of people picked referred to examples, and that was really the only problem with it, right? So the wrong answer in that case was not accurately describing the record. So anyways, flaw questions require you to describe exactly what was happening in the passage, and in particular the flaw that was being made. But because you're limited to what happened in the passage, it's a closed question, okay? Necessary and sufficient assumption questions, obviously related. They both deal with assumptions, but they're on two different sides of this chasm. Necessary assumption questions are closed because as you read each answer choice, you're asking yourself, which one of the following answers has to be assumed? Which one of the following is required by the record? If the author is going to come to the conclusion that they came to, what is an answer choice that they would have to accept? The record is going to force them to agree with that. Sufficient assumption question is totally different. It's saying which one of the following, if assumed, not that it has to be, but if it were, would essentially prove the conclusion, right? So there you're being invited to look at new information and say, what does this new information do to prove the conclusion? That's open or open record. I'm trying to think of what else there is. There's reasoning questions. Those are also closed because you're asked to describe exactly what reasoning the author used, right? You can't go outside. Like, you're going to look for something that happened outside of that record. No. Maybe paradox questions. Those are pretty common. That's open, right? Because it's saying which one of the following, if true, does the most to resolve the apparent paradox above. Okay, so bottom line, you can think of closed questions as all fundamentally coming back to this one idea. What must be true given what was said? There are different variants. They're asking that question in slightly different ways, but they're fundamentally asking what must be true. And in fact, if you ask yourself what must be true in a closed question, necessary assumption, flaw, must be true, supported, you're very likely to get to the right answer. Because at its core, that's what we're asking. Okay, you want a necessary assumption? Okay, let me read these 5 answer choices and figure out which one must be true if I want any chance of getting to this conclusion. On the flip side of that, in an open question, you're not asking what must be true. You're instead asking which one, if it were true, is going to have the biggest impact. It's going to do the most to help or hurt the argument. It's going to actually it's going to move the needle when it comes to whatever you're trying to resolve or strengthen or weaken in the passage.